What are we getting into here?
We're gonna, in honor of all of the mining stuff that we've been sharing on Bitcoin Magazine Live this week, we're gonna talk one of the publicly traded mining companies based out of Canada, Hut 8. We're gonna talk a lot about their strategy, their growth efforts, and their hodl strategy. And then we'll dive into the chart, look at some support and resistance, and set some expectations on where we can see this stock moving in the future.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Let's dive in.
Let's do it. So, Hut 8, based out of Canada. They are probably one of the mid-size mining companies. I mean, you have Core Scientific, you have Riot, you have Marathon, just to name some of like the bigger players. But Hut 8 is definitely making waves. Most recently, back in November, in their latest earnings report, they announced that they mined 256 Bitcoin. They have a very unique strategy. However, they do not sell off their Bitcoin beyond what they need to operate. Everything else they hold. So as of their most recent earnings report, they have 5,242 Bitcoin in reserve. That is more self-mined Bitcoin than any other mining company.
That's crazy. And we're seeing that more and more where these companies hang on to what they mine. I mean, it's the hallmark of a good bull market. They can afford to just stay afloat with just a little bit of that overhead going back into their operations.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think you'll really appreciate this little tidbit. Not only do they mine Bitcoin, they do also mine Ethereum. However, for every Ethereum token that they mine, they immediately sell it for more Bitcoin. They are all in on their Bitcoin holding strategy. Even though they do mine another currency, they specifically sell it for more Bitcoin. So that just goes to show you how all in they really are on Bitcoin.
I love to hear it. We've got Diesel Kane coming with a lot of questions today from the chat. He says, any whole coiners here? There's not many left. Diesel, I'll just say there's a bunch of us. We're all around you, and we're all happy to get you to whole coin status as well. So keep looking out for those earn carrot codes. That's a crazy statistic, Q. I've heard of these miners also just kind of for their own leisure. They have so much power at their disposal that they'll also do speculative attacks and reorganize shitty meme coins and altcoins because they have just so much more computing power than the whole network of any of those centralized like scams.
Love that. Show these centralized systems their flaw in that they are centralized and why the Bitcoin on decentralized network is just superior to that.
Yeah, there's a good website somewhere. I'll have to find it posted in the chat, but it shows what it would cost approximately to attack any given blockchain for, whatever block interval, a couple of minutes. And, with Bitcoin, I mean, I don't even want to guess, several $1 million a minute, $1 billion. I don't know. It's too expensive to like the incentives are aligned such that you wouldn't carry out the attack. If you had that much computing power and money, you would just mine Bitcoin. But these other chains, that's not the case. The other chains, it can be profitable to just carry out the attack and steal and make off with the funds.
Let this be a nice little reminder for all those listening and watching. Just keep buying Bitcoin, ignore all the other shit coins.
That's right. That's right. So let's dig into it. What's happening with Hut 8?
So I want to paint a quick picture before we dive into their efforts to really grow and expand. So as of right now, they have roughly 35,000 mining machines, but their hash rate is roughly 1.7 exahashes per second. That hash rate puts them in the middle of the pack. However, they do have plans on expanding. There should be a new mining site opening up in North Bay, Ontario. Just a reminder that Hut 8 is a Canadian mining company. They have 2 mining centers in Alberta currently. So this one in North Bay, Ontario will be their third. They do envision becoming a global company, and expanding operations into the US is something this company is strongly considering. Based on estimates, when this Ontario mining, when the mining center opens up, they will up their exahash rate to 2.5 per by the end of 2021. Considering the current rankings of all mining companies, this would lock them in at a rough around 11th the 11th largest Bitcoin miner globally, right behind SBI Crypto with a 2.89 exahash rate capacity. Um, one
I,
other
I
thing,
I just wanted to chip in there that, that's a trait of a good, healthy mining company is constantly their ambitions are outpacing their abilities in terms of the hashing capacity. They're always buying new rack space, new sites, looking for new sources of energy. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. As the network grows, part of the game, the whole mining game, is expanding and being able to scale, because you don't just scale for increased profits in Bitcoin magazine. I mean, excuse me, Bitcoin mining. You have to scale to stay afloat.
absolutely, it is a growing industry right now, and looking at not only who is in the lead of this industry, but also who is leading the charge and growing is really going to set the stage of who are going to be the next leaders out of Bitcoin mining. Um, this is just like a fun little tidbit that I saw and I just wanted to share. So obviously we know how hot these mining rigs can get. One of the, in a weird way, benefits for Hut 8, an energy cost that they don't have. They actually aren't cooling their mining rigs because they're based in Alberta and it's so cold up there that they can
Hmm.
kind of get away with it. That said, they use various different forms of energy, whether it's wind, gas, and traditional energy to actually mine their coins. They do have intentions and plans on becoming carbon neutral in the future. As of now, they
Hmm.
are not. I think as we see more green development come out of the mining space and we see new ways to capitalize on energy that aren't being done currently, we could see Hut 8, I think, leading the charge again and trying to find new, cleaner ways of mining their Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think I don't think we'll get into it this show, but we could talk about coal and and green energy sources for a long time. We'll definitely have to spend some time on that soon. I would love to talk about that with you, but I think it bears repeating that Bitcoin incentivizes clean energy sources, renewable energy sources, however you want to phrase it. Bitcoin allows you to capture stranded energy, rushing waterfalls that are far from any city. You might say, well, these guys are setting up shop in some really odd places away from cities. It's like, exactly. There's no other way to capture and monetize and store that power in perfect monetary energy except through Bitcoin mining, which only requires a source of power, essentially, and an internet connection. Do you
Yeah.
see? And then it's geographically independent. That's the great thing about a decentralized network.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk to you for days about what I think could be the future of green energy, and I believe it will come out of the Bitcoin universe. I mean, you have El Salvador mining Bitcoin off of a volcano. You have Canada now prioritizing hydroelectric energy to be used to mine their Bitcoins. I would not be surprised, and my expectation, frankly, is set very high. But I think the next iteration of quote unquote clean energy comes out of development done in the Bitcoin space. Um, but to get back to the topic at hand, I do want to highlight a few more other revenue streams because I've talked about how Hut 8 mines Bitcoin, but they typically hold it. And then they do mine Ethereum, but then they'll turn around and sell that Ethereum for more Bitcoin. Some of their other revenue streams include actually repairing mining machines for other companies in the US and Europe and allowing other mining companies to use its facilities, like a WeWork almost, but for mining. Based on these other revenue streams that Hut 8 has, they're actually not subject to the fluctuation in Bitcoin price as much as some of these other mining companies and Bitcoin adjacent equities typically can be. That said, a short-sighted move down in Bitcoin price will also lead to a downturn in the Hut stock price. However, if all of us on here do believe, like I do, that whenever the price of Bitcoin goes down, it's on sale, so too should uh, uh, so too is Hut stock whenever it goes down in price. So now let's move on over to the actual charts. It has not been a pretty end of the year for Hut coming off of this high back in November, and we've been on a pretty straight tailwind down. We're starting to see a little bit of a bottoming out here.
Q, I gotta point out right off the bat that you bring me a new chart every week and they always look like this. What's the deal here? Why are they all going down?
I mean, for better or worse, in a weird way, all of these stocks do mimic in a degree the price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin reached highs around April of earlier this year. Hut 8 made a high around February. If you go back to the very first episode of Bitcoin Adjacent Equities, so too did MicroStrategy. They made a high in February that was actually never reached again. Now let's fast forward down to November when Bitcoin was making new all-time highs, as too was Hut. As Bitcoin's price came down, so too did Hut's. But Hut had a second layer, and all of these stocks have a second component that is really driving this crash down. Not only is the price of Bitcoin coming down, which MicroStrategy, Hut, some of these companies hold it on their balance sheet. So as a result, investors are saying, hey, the price of Bitcoin just went down 25%. Your cash reserves, your Bitcoin on reserve, that value just went down as well. So in theory, your company's value decreased. That, coupled with the fact that the market has just been ugly and miserable to deal with pretty much ever since Jerome Powell finally admitted that he's been lying to us all and inflation is not transitory, the market has not been in any direction. And as a result, volatile stocks are crashing hard. You see a high of 16 and a low of 7.3. So over 50% of the stock's value was lost since November 10th all the way to the beginning of this week. It's a little nerve wracking. The market is not kind to anyone at this moment. But that said, this is the great opportunity, I think, to build out your list, build out what it is you like, learn about these companies, and start setting expectations. I would say one of the things that I really love doing here on Bitcoin Adjacent Equities is not trying to say, oh, the stock is going to go to this price by this date, but rather help everyone really get a sense and understand, hey, if we start going towards this price level, these are where our expectations should be. If we start going down to this price level, this is where our expectations should be so that we can set proper risk reward scenarios for ourselves based on what we're looking to do in the markets.
Q, can I take a brief moment to address some of our comments
Please.
real quick? All right, we've got Ruby Lily. I just love this question, so I get excited. I got to keep you guys in here. She says, I'm curious what people are doing with money stuck in 401ks or rollovers. Do they buy MicroStrategy or withdraw early, take the tax hit, and buy Bitcoin or something else? And I think, Q, you'd probably agree with this. The answer just depends on who you are. You know, do your research, check out your options, because there's a lot of creative plays there. There's speculative attacks there that can be made through purchasing Grayscale at a discount. There's all kinds of things you can do with that retirement money sitting aside. Personally, I'll tell you, I cashed out all my retirement money and bought Bitcoin and took the tax hit, and I made all of that money back. I mean, of course, I don't sell my Bitcoin, but in theory, you know, I went from no Bitcoin retirement to an allocation of completely Bitcoin that I custody myself retirement. And I'm way more willing to bet on that than on a centralized pyramid scheme that the government has set up to take care of me supposedly when I'm older. I'd rather cash out, take the tax hit, and bet on myself to be short. But I'm curious what you think about that, Q.
No, I mean, look, what you bring up and what Ruby is asking is the problem that so many people have. And I think before I dive into like really answering it, the sheer fact that some entity is telling you, telling me, telling Ruby, telling our parents what they can and can't do with their money based on how old they are, based on the taxes that they should or should not have to pay on it. It just, again, feeds into the reasons and rationale as to why the fiat system is inherently flawed. I think you hit the head on the nail. It absolutely depends on like what you as a personal investor can handle, can take up. You brought up how you cashed out and you took the tax hit. I personally have not been able to take that level of a tax hit, nor willing to. At the same time, that's why I do Bitcoin adjacent equities, because there are ways for us to still have Bitcoin exposure hidden from taxes through our different retirement accounts. And at the same time, I can still put other fiat to work towards Bitcoin. I think personally, one of the things that I'm trying to do and would like people to who are watching Bitcoin adjacent equities to be thinking about is this is exactly what, if you leave money in your 401k and you are a Bitcoiner, these are the types of companies you should be looking at. These are the types of companies you should be considering because it gives you the same, not the same exposure, different exposure in the same industry, in the same sector that you believe in, that we believe in, and that we all think is going to change the world.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier in the show, I'm not a diversify your investments kind of guy. I don't believe there's a need for that anymore for me personally and for many people. But there's not a one size fits all here. There are some people who can't for legal or other reasons. They simply cannot hold Bitcoin in custody it themselves. It would break fiduciary obligations. There's all kinds of reasons. So for them, there's a variety of answers. There's a lot of different ways to hold, and that's what we're discussing on this show. There's a lot of ways to hold Bitcoin without holding Bitcoin. There are other layers, right? It's not black and white. You either have Bitcoin or you don't. I mean, that part is black and white. You either do have Bitcoin or you don't. But having exposure to a Bitcoin adjacent equity of some sort is better than having no exposure to Bitcoin at all, without a doubt, every time.
Absolutely. And I think too, the other thing that we have to, whether or not you agree with this, whether or not you believe this, like there's a lot of money in 401ks all over this country right now. And that is money that is going to be held for a predetermined set of time until most citizens turn 65. It will stay there. What the value of those dollars will be when people can access that remains to be seen. However, I know it's a little bit of a contentious subject within the Bitcoin community when ETFs come out, when you have these different offerings that give you exposure to Bitcoin in a different way, but ultimately you are not the sole custodian of your Bitcoin. I actually think they are fundamentally important in pushing forward hyper Bitcoinization because you are now validating it to a new class of investors. You're adding exposure to it in a new way that doesn't already exist. I mean, I will be the first person and I will always pound this drum. The stock market is just a legal fucking casino. Excuse my language. It is a legal casino. That's it. And ultimately, when you have these new Bitcoin offerings that get brought up in the stock market, yes, you're absolutely right. They are a little scammy. They are a little sketchy. Why wouldn't I just put my money in Bitcoin rather than like go get this ETF from Grayscale or buy MicroStrategy shares? However, unfortunately, the system that we have been raised in, we are fortunate that we are young enough and that we were able to make that switch early on in our lives. But imagine someone who's 55 and who has set aside millions of dollars over the last 30 plus years of their working career to then turn around and be like, shit, I believe in Bitcoin. Everything is, my dollars are going to be worthless by the time I need to access them. But at the same time, I can't afford the level of taxes that I'm going to have to pay on all that money in my 401k. It'll wipe out everything I have. So I have to get exposure to it in some way. And that is why I think those ETFs, these new offerings are vitally important. It will continue to validate it in a broken system regardless, but it validates it. And as you validate it, you push it forward. All news is good news for Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just add again, I mean, this is the second best solution, right? If you can't hold Bitcoin outright, or let's say you can't hold Bitcoin at all, I mean, you should probably allocate to a diverse portfolio of tech stocks, Bitcoin mining stocks, MicroStrategy, software as a service, companies that have embraced Bitcoin. That would be my suggestion, a portfolio of those. In which case, if you can't hold Bitcoin outright, you may need to diversify. And that's why we're coming back covering different options for y'all. So we can get back to I think that was a worthwhile digression. I think we answered a couple people's questions in the comments. So
no, Ruby, I hope this info was helpful. I know a lot of the people in the comments as well have been giving you a ton of advice. Our producer Chris brought up a really good point as well. There are companies that are starting to specialize in this to help you figure out how to take your 401k and be able to actually invest it directly in Bitcoin. So definitely take a look at some of those opportunities as well. But in the meantime, let's dive back into this in case you're stuck in your 401k and you want some exposure into a mining stock.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're going to look first at support because we've been on this sharp downturn right here. Let me do some drawing on this chart. So we have this very sharp downtrend that we have not yet broken. Just like the Tesla stock, we're going to be looking to see a break on this downtrend. But then, of course, we have to set expectations of just because you break it does not guarantee you're going up. On the upside, we have the 21-day exponential moving average and the 50-day simple moving average, both as overhead resistance. Below us, we do have our 200-day simple moving average, which was recently just tested, and now we're coming back up. So I would say right now expectations are going to be we're going to come up to this 21-day exponential moving average. Additionally, we're probably going to coincide right around here at this 932 level. You see that this line right here coincides with a little bit of support and resistance that we've gotten over there. Additionally, it's at the bottom of this large candlestick. And what I want to pay attention to is this series of 4 large candlesticks that happened between December 1st and December 6th. All 4 of those days have significantly larger volume than most of the other days around it. Additionally, those candlesticks are much larger than every other day around it as well. So these 4 days are going to give us a lot of support and resistance. We have right here, the bottom of this candlestick, right around the top of this candlestick, right around here at the 932 level. This, as well as our 21-day exponential moving average, if HUT continues to rise up, this will be the first level of resistance. If we break above it with nice volume, we'll keep going. I would say, I'm going to cheat a little bit and use the cheat sheet I made. So the next one would be right over here. And this coincides with the highs we made back over here. I want to specifically put it at the high of where we closed, not the high of this peak. The reason I want to put it the high of this close again goes back to these large candlesticks right around the bottom of this one. And we also see that this was an area of weird resistance before it became support once we broke above it. So this 1035 level is a little awkward and weird. I would say there is a little bit of no man's land in the sense that we're going to see these moving averages come down, probably push us a little lower, and I want to see a squeeze. The fact that we're seeing a tightening in this range tells me that if we can hang out under 9, above 8 a share for about a week or two, that consolidation in price will send a signal that HUT will break. Whether it breaks up or down remains to be seen, but it will break its price level. And we'll probably be looking at this 935, 1035. And then I believe there was one that we had right here. Yes. So we have a downside gap right here on September 17th through the 20th. This downside gap was tested, brought back down, and we went up. And we never came below this until this most recent crash. And we are actually coming up on exactly this level today. So based on where we close today and open tomorrow, it'll be very interesting to see how HUT stock reacts and moves accordingly. We're coming up on this level of resistance, and it wouldn't surprise me if we get turned away and come back down to our 200-day moving average. If we do that, that 200-day moving average does coincide right around these lows from mid-September, and this would be probably one of our first areas of support. Also, right around our change this to red, right around our 200-day simple moving average. This is the first line in the sand, and I would say our second one would be undercutting the low from Monday. Unfortunately, the stock market did do that as well, and it made a new low. If we do make a new short-term low based on this, I would expect this downtrend to just continue. At that point, we'll be looking at breaking below 6 and coming up on a 560 price level. Now, this price level coincides with the high made back in early July and then an area of support that was tested in August. Again, these are breakout levels that we have not seen or tested since, and we are going to be looking at a little bit of a no man's land if you're going to be below all 3 of these moving averages, making significantly new lows on a sharp downtrend like this. My expectation would not be that we come here. However, if we break below this 733 level, going all the way down to 560s is fair game. So that is roughly a 25% decline in stock price from a 730 to a 560 a share. And don't quote me on that because I just did the math in my head. Um, and then the final areas of support, if we do go below 560, and it will be these lows, $4 a share for the psychological hurdle, and then the low of about what's the low exactly? 315 a share back in June. These two levels will kind of be like your, oh my God, please, for the love of God, do not be in this stock if it's continuing to crash this slow. These would be your bargain buy opportunities. However, I again challenge if we are all the way down here, so another 50% decline from current price levels, something is wrong. Something, whether HUT is reporting and saying that they're not actually growing as fast as they had originally forecasted, whether their earnings are coming in and missing significantly, whether if expansion efforts just completely failed and we're pushing back opening this new mining operation another year. These type of things can have a drastic effect on the stock price because so much of this increase is based on people's expectations that it's going to grow. The price of Bitcoin is going to grow and their hash rate is going to continue to grow. Any of those three things stalling out can lead to more downside on HUT stock.
So what does this mean near term Bitcoin adjacent equities investors? Can you tie this all back? And let's remind people again, this is the HUT 8 mining chart that we're looking at.
Yeah. So, I mean, I forget right now, and I'm so sorry. I know someone in our comment box brought up the fact that Bitcoin is now above 51,000. Awesome. After getting a nice little quick dip by at 48,000, I love to hear that. I would say this: should the price of Bitcoin continue to correct, should we re-enter a bull market in Bitcoin, HUT is going to jump right back into that bull market. I would say as we watch the price action in this level between $9 and $7 a share, it'll be important to see how we react. We see a day like this where we have nice large volume on a nice big candlestick, but we're unable to actually break above this area of resistance. If we can't break above this resistance, that's fine, so long as we're able to hold this support. I would start setting expectations on whatever of these lines we start to break, and that could be the direction that the stock continues to move towards. Catalysts will be the price of Bitcoin. Catalysts will be when this mining operation is announced that it's open, functioning, and operational. That will be another catalyst, hopefully to boost HUT8 as well as just the entire Bitcoin community forward.
I love it. Well, any last notes for us here, Q, before we wrap? I appreciate having you come in again today.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me for almost an hour and a half today. But I think I'll close out saying the same thing I always do: just stack sats.
Yeah, buy that Bitcoin, guys. And if you can't buy the Bitcoin, if you can't buy that pure Bitcoin, well, then we've got Bitcoin adjacent equities once a week here. So far, we've covered Square, we've covered MicroStrategy, and we've covered HUT8 mining. I see a lot more mining stocks in our future, guys. So stay tuned to get more Bitcoin adjacent equities next week, or perhaps the week after with Q. Looking forward to that. And I just wanted to say, if you're, oh, go ahead.
I just want to really quickly say, if anyone in the comments wanted us to specifically look at a stock for next week or in the upcoming weeks, feel free to throw out any Bitcoin stocks that you guys maybe own or watching, and we'll happily do a breakdown of it on a future segment.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome, guys. Maybe we'll get some polls up and see what you guys want for us to cover in the future. Freedom says below 50K is a buy for me. Yeah, man. Anything under like $5 million Bitcoin is a buy for me. So I agree with you. Yeah, shout out everybody in the comments. Shout out to everybody on Twitch. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, please. We need to get our subscriber numbers up so that we can release that Bitcoin. If you're listening, you have not subscribed, go ahead. We got a jam-packed show for you the rest of the afternoon here. So We're going to take a short break and then we'll be back with our daily dunk today.
Yo, what is going on, plebs? We're going to take a break from our programming to tell you about the resurrection of our print magazine, starting with the El Salvador issue. Starting this fall, Bitcoin Magazine will be available on newsstands nationwide and at retail stores such as Barnes & Noble. Don't want to get off your couch though? No problem. You can also go to store.bitcoinmagazine.com. So skip the line and get each issue shipped directly to your front door with our annual subscription. I'm talking 4 issues a year that contain exclusive interviews and profiles with leading Bitcoiners, actionable insights on the state of the market, breaking news and cultural trends, along with powerful photos and artwork from the best artists in the world.